Welcome to another show of NFT Hype, where we go through the industry's ups and downs, I guess you would say, from the hype cycle to the bust cycle to all the cycles in between. But what we're here to do is not really hype anything, but talk about the technology behind NFTs. Hi, all. Welcome to a new episode of NFT Hype. Today we have Gansy of Rare Sat Society on. Gansy, that's a little bit of a tongue twister there. I hope others don't have a problem with it, and it's just me.
Yeah, the rare Sat Society can kind of be a jumble, say that 5 times fast.
Well, awesome. On today's episode, Gansy and I are going to be talking about why art on Bitcoin and why you need to know about this today. There's quite a bit of trends happening as we speak. Elon just literally tweeted out something about on-chain art, and I think this episode that we've had planned for weeks is quite timely. So first, I just kind of wanted to talk to Gansy about Amsterdam, which we met at a couple of weeks ago. Gansy, what were your initial impressions of that? And I've heard it, but maybe let the listeners know.
Yeah, I didn't know what to expect as far as inscribing Amsterdam goes. I'd gone to the Bitcoin Miami conference and had a lot of fun there. And, that was the first Ordinals conference as well. And a lot of us early builders were there. And, it was great. But inscribing Amsterdam really put the seal or stamp on everything for me because the feeling that I had at inscribing Amsterdam and meeting all these builders is like, these people are like really like just quality people, experienced builders that really bring a lot to this domain, and getting to meet people like you and everyone else in this space. So I think it felt really special. And this is the first year, and I it's kind of funny because you look at Amsterdam, which was really the seat of the Enlightenment period. I mean, I think that's where it really had its boom, and we're kind of bringing that back with Bitcoin. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that, and so I think that added to kind of that unique, like, special feeling that I had in Amsterdam. So really
I love
excited.
that macro. I love that macro perspective. You're a history major, right, or a philosophy major?
One of my degrees is in philosophy, yeah. So I uh, really resonated with that while I was there.
Oh, what an awesome city for that conference. It was just steeped with history, and like you said, there's from a metaphorical point of view, it was just perfect, really.
Well, look, we're making history with Bitcoin right now this year. Ordinals, I am extremely bullish, but I think that like Bitcoin for me or Ordinals is really special. Bitcoin became a file system this year, and I think where we go from here is just truly unreal and inexplicable. And I think we will just have to see it blossom, and see all the things that get built. And we've already built so much incredible stuff this year. So
Speaking of which, you were one of the first to jump onto this whole file system on Bitcoin. Um, the Rare Sat Society basically was one of the first organizations out there filtering through the file system, let's for lack of a better word, and finding out which ones were rare. For anybody who doesn't know, ordinal theory assigns an ID to every Satoshi that is on the Bitcoin network, hereby giving them a unique identity. And Gansy and his organization, Rare Sat Society, was one of the first to sort of parse through those, categorize them into different things, different silos, I guess you would say, by date, by many different attributes, right, Gansy?
Yeah, look, we of course we targeted what is known as RRI or Rottamore Rarity Index, and that's your base rarities, from uncommon up to mythic. But even at the time when we first started hunting, I wrote down like 100 ideas that I thought would be interesting sat narratives. So really, I was blowing my hunter up. I was like, you got to add this to the software, you got to add that, um, and there's a bunch of stuff that no one's really even seen yet that we've like collected. And I think that's what really makes Bitcoin or Ordinals unique is these sats. Like I really honestly believe it's the backbone of Ordinals, and it's a canvas. These sats are a canvas, and which later we'll talk about like an interesting canvas to put your art on Bitcoin. And I don't know, it's just different. Like you don't have this in the NFT world.
I want to explore that like concept just a little bit more because I feel like the people in Ordinals, they get that concept and we've been living with it for months now. However, like the new person coming in to the space, why why is Satoshi, what is a Satoshi and why is it considered a canvas for your art, similarly to how you would pick a canvas for your painting?
Right. So a Satoshi is the smallest unit of Bitcoin, and each Bitcoin comprises 100 million Satoshis. And so there's 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be mined, which means there will be 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. And, as far as a canvas, look at ETH. Like everything's the same. Like if I'm going to mint something on ETH, there's nothing really truly unique about it on the blockchain. And then obviously, like this Elon Musk video you brought up, like all those are IPFS pointers. So it's the complete opposite on Bitcoin. We've got unique and special and exotic and vintage, Satoshis, and that's immutably stored on chain. So, and I think, the possibilities for these different sat narratives, and I'm like really excited for a particular project that's going to be focusing on this, which is Satology. They will be allowing people to submit custom sat ranges for people to establish new sat narratives. So, like, super
Wow.
excited about that, and I think that's what just really gives value to this chain.
So like for the listeners out there, a vintage sat, much like a vintage bottle of wine or a vintage bottle of whiskey or vintage clothing, it all goes back and is related to a specific period in time. So a Satoshi, which is 1/100th of a 1/100th millionth of a Bitcoin, can now be assigned an identity according to ordinal theory, and that identity is based on the time that it was mined. So therefore, you're telling me that I can go back and I could get a Satoshi that was mined in like let's say 2009, the year that Bitcoin was first introduced.
Yeah, so I've seen a lot of collectors, sat collectors, picking up Block Nines recently, and Block Nines are the oldest sats in circulation. Those were mined first week of Bitcoin, and and so vintage are all sub 1,000 blocks, so all the first 1,000 blocks, and somebody out there actually found out which ones have moved, and only like 100 something of those sub 1,000 blocks have moved. And like the really cool ones, like block 420 or block 777, those I believe 777 moved, but I know 420 hasn't. But yeah, there's not that many that have moved because it's just so early in the game, and a lot of that Bitcoin is just not moved literally since 2009. So, and I like your comparison with the vintage bottle of wine. I think that description and that way of looking at things will become much more emboldened over the next few years as Ordinals grows.
So you're almost in agreement that a vintage sat, as time goes on, could possibly have more uh value, or maybe just more, I guess, the narrative behind it would keep growing.
I think it's historically significant. Let's be honest. The supplies for these are really large, and
Okay.
so in the early day or like early days of ordinals, people referred to everything as rares. It didn't matter what it was. Like if it was a special Satoshi, they called it rare. But now like we've educated people and look, these block nines, the block 78s, they aren't so rare because the circulating supplies are really large. I think circulating supply for block nines as it stands right now is around 340 million. So,
Okay.
that's a lot of Satoshis. But for me, it's the historical significance of what it is.
Yeah, so that makes sense. The quality of the SAT is the same. The supply might be bigger. Um, and that's probably because during that period in history, there were just a lot of Bitcoin mined. Is that why?
Yeah. So when Bitcoin mining first started, it's the block reward was 50 Bitcoin per block. So, that's I think it's whatever that's 7,000 Bitcoin a day or whatever it was if my math is right there. But it was a lot of Bitcoin, and then in 2012 or 2013, sorry, the block reward 25, and then we're at 6.25 now. This next year will be 3.125. So here in a couple halvings, like we're the block reward will be less than a Bitcoin. And the
Interesting.
last blocks to ever be produced will be literally one Satoshi.
Wow. So, okay, I think we've sort of laid the groundwork here for art in an indirect way. Um, the need for art has been timeless. People have always created art, people have always painted. In real life, stuff has flourished. We've had a probably one of the oldest markets in the world, which is the art market. And now art, digital art can be inscribed, can be uploaded to Bitcoin's file system using your past metaphor on a special Satoshi, on a unique Satoshi. So how does that break a couple of the narratives of NFTs that we saw in the last cycle? So one of the criticisms of NFTs were that there were broken links if you couldn't upload the exact image to the blockchain. Let's talk about that.
So what I tell people, like I've been very adamant about kind of telling people in spaces over the past 8 months or is that this is content inscribed on digital gold. It does not get better than that. There's nothing better than Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the first. Bitcoin is what started cryptocurrency. Like it's the best. And then you add ordinal theory, and you add rare sats on top of that. I mean, we're talking content inscribed on digital diamonds, and of course, the immutability is like a huge part of that, right? We don't need IPFS; like it exists on chain. And look, there's some limitations that we'll have to work through, and because like as it stands right now, unless you have a miner that can process something that's over 400 kilobytes, your limit's really 400 kilobytes. And then, the a block size could be up to 4 megabytes. And if you're look, I was an artist on ETH. I was making images that were 80, 90, almost 100 megabytes in size for just an image. After upscaling, and how do we do that on Bitcoin? Well, that's they developed that. It's called recursion, and you can recursively kind of combine parts of a picture. You could break a picture down, let's say it's 12, 20, whatever megabytes, and break that into 100 pieces or however many pieces you want to and reassemble it using recursion. I think that's a interesting implementation, and hopefully it stays like this because obviously at some point someone could design something that works with Bitcoin that's kind of maybe related to IPSS. So I don't know how I feel about that. I definitely like how it exists and works now.
So you're saying that size is pretty much the only sort of downside here. Well, one of them, the other one possibly being costs to upload
Right.
the cost of the block space, really. Um, However, the size issue has sort of been solved with a programmatic approach to combining images um, using a concept called recursion. So, like, we going back to that video that Elon put out and Rogan put out this morning, or yeah, last night on Halloween. Um, Elon's criticism was literally like the images aren't on chain, and this is kind of like why I came across the Ordinals is because I was looking at a web page for a popular art project on Ethereum, and I saw it was linking to some sort of server where they hosted the image. And that's kind of like when a light bulb went off for me. Is that really what people don't like about NFTs?
Yeah, it's so funny. I saw a video by Andrew Tate recently where he just literally slammed NFTs. And someone maybe one of his friends that's very wealthy like recommended he buy whatever $1 million+ NFT, and he mentioned click and save, like right click and save, like I could just right click and save this JPEG, and they're like, well, no, 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 it's on the blockchain, and he's like, well, who gives a crap if it's like who's literally looking on the blockchain? It's a bunch of nerds. And you know what? Like there is some truth there to a degree, and like we are a bunch of nerds. Like
Yep.
that's like 100%. And like no shame there for sure. Like we're forging. This is like we're literally riding on the wave of the future with ordinals, and but it's a certain type of collector that's interested in this, and I think Bitcoin's going to change all of that because let's look at really big artists like Beeple. I went to Beeple's event, whatever, a month or a month and a half ago, and I was able to talk to him. And obviously, he made his fame on Bitcoin. And what's kind of interesting is that piece
On
that
Ethereum,
he,
you mean?
oh, sorry, yes, Ethereum, my bad. So, what's interesting about that piece that he sold for $69 million is it's a collage of all the everydays. Well, what would be better than using recursion to accomplish that and put it on Bitcoin? And he's definitely entertaining like the idea, I think, of coming to Bitcoin because I asked him, I was like, when are you coming to Ordinals? And I think he wants to understand it better. Like he was wanting me to kind of like break down what this all means, and was telling him about rare sats, but I think those kind of artists are coming, and that's a lot of what I saw in Amsterdam was a lot of art incubators are coming. I mean, had to have spoken to like four or five, like pretty big ones. So
Yeah, like okay, so you brought up an interesting point there regarding like nerd speak, right? Like, um, so to the regular guy, on chain versus off chain probably doesn't mean anything. Um, Ownership probably does. So from that point of view, maybe Ethereum doesn't have a downside, given that the fact that they have some benefits to the smart contracts. But for the purists out there who want their file system to be as secure as possible, I know that you have a technical background. Would this be like using a different operating system where you had more control over the file system and more sort of security, like a Linux, for example, versus Windows or something else?
yeah, I think that's an interesting comparison. I agree with that. Like I like that idea. I think yeah, Bitcoin is it in regards to that. Like um, I think it kind of it checks off all the boxes. And look, like I was a traditional collector before this, and we're in a new age now. This is digital collectibles. Like this is what people want. Like this is these newer generations, like they're collecting digital things. They maybe are not collecting as many like physical collectibles. I still think, I still collect physical things like toys, cards, even antiques. And it's so funny. I'll go into the store, like a toy store or something, or even Walmart or Target, and I'll see people my age. collecting Hot Wheels or like Marvel figures or whatever it is. It's so funny. Like it's not like kids. I don't see a lot of kids from this generation collecting. It's us guys that are 30, 40 plus years old, and that's what we grew up with, and like that's where we're still in that uh, uh, collectibles game. So
What do you think it is about us humans that we like to collect stuff? Because I've met people from all cultures, all age groups that like to collect. What is it?
well, I think it was the 80s and 90s. It was just that, and gaming, and it's just like the toys that came out during that generation and like the cartoons. I was literally just having this discussion last night with one of my friends. Like, I don't know, there was something just so special about it. And maybe this started in like the 60s and 70s. You kind of GI Joe. My dad, he would collect like GI Joe figures, and then Barbie and the Hot Wheels, and it's just, I think all those things came out and just really like progressed that space.
And some people like collecting like cars, you know? Um, they just have a bunch of cars sitting around in their garage.
Right. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I think it's just something to do with the fact that we get something to obsess about. So I don't know. I think I brought that up to say that we can all nerd out about something. For example, my father-in-law, I can't he just the guy just can't stop talking about Chevys and different types of engines and the eight cylinders versus the big block and the small block and like I see comparisons there because um he'll talk about like the Corvette in a certain year and the first car out of the line and the last car out of the line are always the coveted ones. And to me, that's like a Satoshi that's an uncommon and a black, right?
Right.
It's the same kind of thing.
No, it is. That's the interesting thing about cars, because take a model, let's say whatever it is, like a Corvette or something. The years of 2000 to 2010, maybe they were built in a certain way, or
Right.
they had certain components, and well, those are the ones that can that don't have problems and that go 200, 300,000 miles, or like whatever the situation is. And I think that's super cool, because I'm always someone who buys quality things. I always love when a product lasts. I think that's the coolest thing, is that you have an old car that is still just killing it. It's had oil changes and tires rotated like that, or new tires, like that's it, and it's still a beast. Like, I think that's, like, I really appreciate that, and I think that's probably what your dad sees, or your was you said your stepfather or whatever, but father-in-law.
Father-in-law. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's always talking about different people who get traded from different car companies that come in and help build a new design. He knows about that guy that came in and the new Allison engine and the odd transmission. And it's like everyone I think nerds out about some things. And I think in terms of art and security and longevity and value and network, I think we're kind of on the right track here, Gansy. So I mean, like, in what ways do artists benefit from incorporating Bitcoin and blockchain technology into their creative process? Like, how do we bridge that gap for the traditional art collector or sort of the traditional artist?
Well, I'll tell you right now, like, one of the more interesting things is parent-child, because that way you can literally showcase provenance. So your parent inscription could and maybe it's on an interesting sat, like an uncommon, or even a rare, like what Seize Control did, and then all their children, okay, all the art pieces for that collection um or sit under that parent. So it's like almost kind of like a family tree, if you want to think of it that way. But I think that's something artists can leverage in the future. And that's fairly new. Literally just a week ago, We now have bulk parent child that are not cursed. And I was actually I did a collection, 241 children. It's the first bulk parent child non-cursed on special sat. So pretty epic, making history. And I think these artists that are coming over can leverage that. And I'm trying to onboard as many people in the traditional art scene into into Web3, into Bitcoin, because I have a buddy in LA, super talented artist. I was like, you have to be on Bitcoin. Like this is it. Like this is the way to get exposure. This is something very new, and I think collectors, serious art collectors, like we already saw serious art collectors coming into ETH, right? I mean, we had a ton of stuff go to Christie's and Sotheby's auctions, and I think it's going
Yeah.
to be 100-fold on Bitcoin.
Yeah, yeah, good point. And when you talk to those traditional art collectors, what are you telling them the major benefits are? So you mentioned provenance there. Um, how do you explain that to them?
Well, it could be difficult sometimes, if someone is not from the crypto realm, and you're throwing out all these terms, it can be off-putting. But I tell them, because I'm kind of, for me personally, I'm helping guide that whole process, and I'm like, listen, like, you create the art, I'll take care of the digital, or like complicated things, and do what you do best. And I think we'll obviously see tooling and services and stuff like in the future that will help like onboard traditional artists onto Bitcoin in a more streamlined way. But right now, I'm kind of like nurturing that process for them. And like I'm super into digital. Like I love that, create something physical. Like you're a physical artist, maybe you do oil paints or like installations, whatever it is, sculptures, and have the digital representation of that someone can own, and that can also be provenance for the physical piece. And so I'm super bullish about that. Jonathan Schultz from Ordinal Diamonds, I bought his radioactive diamond piece. Well, he has physicals that he made. It's like on super quality paper, and he actually so he uses like rare gems like diamonds and stuff and gold on art, and he was putting accents on this piece of actual gold that he like paints on there, brush it, or however he does that. So I like that. For me is, I mean, who's doing that? He's got to be like one of whatever, a handful of people in the world that do that. So
That is really cool. Like so what are the challenges or limitations that artists face using this technology?
well, you brought up earlier cost, and right now it's my first like three collections on Bitcoin, or first two, where, because I'm an artist from ETH, it was like, okay, I want to do like the first fine art on Bitcoin. Well, my file sizes are really large. Earlier we talked about like that 400 kilobyte maximum limit. Um, and so my file size is like 250 to like 350 kilobytes. Actually, someone just messaged me the other day on my Technophiles collection. He's like, dude, these file sizes are huge. And I was like,
Yeah.
no, I know. And I only paid $50 to $100 to inscribe those. Now, I think it was May, right around the Bitcoin conference in Miami, the mempool fees to inscribe shot up to 500 sats per VByte.
Wow.
Right, extreme. Right now they're, whatever, like 2 to like 20. And so that art that I inscribed would have cost you 7 to 8 grand to inscribe those same pieces that cost me $50 to $100. And so I think there's an inherent value in that. And as Ordinals grows and the mempool kind of gets slammed, and look, this is the same thing we saw with ETH. Remember when it cost $300 to mint something in 2021?
Yeah.
I think that gives inherent value to the art or whatever's inscribed on it, because look, it already cost me $300 to inscribe this thing. So I think it gives value. And obviously that fluctuates, but and then of course the size limitations. But look, we're building tooling, the stuff that solves this, and like we're going to solve it over time. So I think we see this looking better um, over time, and like I'll repeat again, like hopefully someone doesn't implement some kind of IPFS thing for Bitcoin. Like I kind of think it might be inevitable, so people can host like maybe more robust or larger file types, but I think it's to be seen.
All right. On the other side of things, like we originally talked about in the at the beginning, artists can pick a canvas that has, I guess, some meaning to it. Um, I know that you said that you found some December 25th, 2009 sats. Um, and I'm gonna get some of those, by the way. But to me, like that's kind of a cool canvas to put maybe like a Christmas inspired piece on or something, wouldn't it be?
Well, yeah, I was like, please, and I hadn't tweeted about that yet, but I will soon because we put the Christmas sats on SatScribe, and SatScribe is the rare sat inscription service. You can literally go choose your sat and inscribe right there. It's like super smooth process, and it's something we built, and like amazing devs that built this. But put your Christmas invitations, put your Christmas photos, put your Christmas art, and that's like a really basic one. That was something when I told you about the 100 ideas I wrote down when I first started sat hunting. Of course, holiday sats, you know, Halloween, Christmas, like Valentine's Day, Fourth of July, like that. That's just obvious because like people resonate with that. So yeah, I would love to see like someone do kind of something interesting that with that, and it just harkens back to the sat narratives. Like every Satoshi has a story to tell because it was mined on a date. It has a number. It has a
Yep.
sat name, which is extremely like my.
Oh yeah.
People probably get tired of me saying this, but my sat names are my favorite type, sat type, and and that's why I love what Satology is doing because people can come in and submit ranges for custom sat narratives, and that's like Black God from Classified. He came to me and he goes, "I think that the last sat of the block could be like a huge deal," and I was like, cool, like I totally support. Like I wasn't like super huge on it at the time, but I said, look, I'll find them for you. And then,
Yeah.
oh, dude, Black Sats are like the biggest sat, like highest volume Sats now. Like it's incredible. And I mean, people implement, Satting implemented it, Magisat implemented it. Like it's basically, like a really popular attribute now. So and then whatever the day you were married, like the sat name of
Yeah.
your son, like those are all relevant.
And is tooling coming so that I could find something like that? Let's say my birthday.
Yeah, well, so Rabbi with Lumisat created a bounty, and we wanted to create this, but like we have to really pick and choose like what we create. It's obviously expensive to develop things, and so he built a service, and I know he's still working on it, where you could go in and say that, like, hey, I want, my wedding date as a sat, like whatever, November 23rd, 2013. I need those sats because I'm going to inscribe like our wedding photos on it or something. And a hunter could go there and implement that into their software, like their hunting software, and you put up the bounty, like, hey, I'll pay $100 for 1,000 of them. So like super excited about that. That's what just kind of makes this grow. Because dude, there's a million sat narratives that could be done. I had a collection come to me and he was doing like Spartan warriors or something as the art,
Yeah, yeah.
and 300 was the name of the collection. And I was like, dude, like, I mean, there's a lot we could do with this. I was like, I wanted to see how big the actual Spartan army was, and maybe that's the block number that we find. And so it's just really anything can be done.
To me, what it's sounding like is like there's a just another dimension to the art now. Um, is the sat number and the sat name. Uh, so I think that's really cool. I mean, palindromes were an easy narrative because of the number. Names are quite important. So, yeah, to me, I feel like creating art is now not just what's on what the imagery is, but also the canvas, which is no one cared. No one knows exactly what canvas Picasso put something on. It could have been the back of a box. Who knows, right? Like we don't know. So at least with digital art on Bitcoin, you know.
Yeah, exactly. I it's so I met a artist in Amsterdam. I think you did too. Is the Italian guy, Discanio. This guy's Da Vinci. He's modern day Da Vinci, and his art is absolutely incredible. And like I'm super excited for him coming into Ordinals. Like I know they created the Ordinal Studio, and we donated a sat to them, a sat name, and just be aware, every sat name it's a one of one, so it's one out of 2.1 quadrillion sats. That's the only one there is, and it was the sat name "Be Deserving." Be deserving of freedom, be deserving of libertas, like, and they put their manifesto on that, and uh, but like that's we're gonna see more and more of that like coming in. And I think like the big names, it's only a matter of time before the big artists like bridge over to Bitcoin.
Okay, good prediction. Like how do you see the future of art on Bitcoin evolving? What opportunities um are you expecting or anticipate?
Yeah, I'd like to see more like fidgetal initiatives. It's clear that there's tons of art incubators, which I think is super important. Let's see, like maybe art blocks comes over. Like I think all those things are kind of inevitable, and that's when really ETH NFTs popped. Was it Tyler Hobbs? Am I getting that right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, and a lot
Dmitry
of
Cherniak is a significant prominent name in the art blocks world. He's kind of like all over the Goosenals connection now. He sent out a tweet this morning. That's interesting. He really liked their memes and the vigor of the community.
well, this community is extremely quality. It's different. Look, like there's some integrity in the space. Like let's be real. Look at there's no royalties on
Yeah.
Magic Eden for Bitcoin. We there's not a ton of 10K collections. They're smaller collections, and unless you're using a launchpad, you got to fork up the money to inscribe these larger collections. Like it might not be cheap. And you have to be smart about your file sizes. And look, you follow the money. It's obvious that the money is coming in. Like 2024 is going to probably be the best year for Bitcoin. Look, I've been here since 2011. That's when I started mining. 15-year anniversary yesterday for Bitcoin white paper. We're 15 years in. I mean, unreal. We've seen it grow this big, and I was watching an altcoin daily video before we started this call, and um, it was Warren Buffett. He said, I couldn't believe he said this. He goes, "If you gave me all the Bitcoin that exists, I wouldn't pay $25 for it." And I was just like, what? He's like, because I can't use it. And now I'm like with Ordinals, I was like, well, with Ordinals now, and of course it was being used before this. But I think it gives like a really unique application. And look, this is the first time basically in 14, 15 years that Bitcoin is being built on. And of course, in Amsterdam, we're talking to the laser-eyed maxis, Bitcoin maxis, and I would uh, uh, try not to trigger them, but ask them, "Hey, what do you think about ordinals?" And um, or they're like, "Well, didn't this guy just kind of come up with it? Isn't it just like arbitrary?" And
Uh-huh.
I'm like, yeah, like sure, like the Rodamore rarity index, yeah, that's arbitrary, but it's super intuitive. It's so intuitive, like it's almost always been there. And then what just happened like a week and a half ago? Rare Sat Seeker found out that someone was extracting uncommons in 2014. How could that
Before
before
ordinal theory
ordinals?
even came out.
Yeah.
So I
And
made a
be,
comment on that, and I thought that was amazingly foresight of the guy, like a huge foresight. But my comment was that makes ordinal theory very intuitive if somebody could figure that out before it was even specified.
Well, we were cogitating on how could this guy know about such a thing. Well, in 2012 there was a proposal for something called colored coins, and this was like fungible tokens on Bitcoin. So I think someone who's just really smart has foresight, right? And seeing the tree line before we get there, saw that and was extracting. Oh, first of the block, that kind of makes sense. Like that's probably going to be something that's valuable, and so it was just really cool to see that.
Yeah, that was really cool to see. Well, Gansy, thank you for joining me on this episode. I bet we could probably go on for a long time, but I'd like to keep it short here for the listeners. Would love to have you again on in a future episode to talk more because I feel like you're just a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Look, for your listeners out there, if you aren't exposed to ordinals yet, come into our Discord. We would love to literally hold your hand through any of this process. And I think this is the digital, for as far as digital collectibles are concerned. This is the future. This is it.
What's your handle on X?
So our handle on X is for the organization is Rare Sat Society, and then my personal is for Gansy is the Gans machine.
Gans with a G. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, GANs. Yeah, generative adversarial networks.
Interesting. Okay. I'll link to those. Thanks, Gansy. Pleasure having you on.
Okay, thanks, Yohann. Take care.